Before we get going with wrapping these pieces of trim, there are a few things we need to remove, such as these air vents and this tray here. To remove the vent from this driver's side piece of trim, we're going to come to the back here and pry these two black tabs with a flathead screwdriver, and we're going to slide the vent out. We'll need to do the same thing with the air vent on this passenger side piece of trim. Now to remove this center vent, we're going to come to the back here with a socket, loosen up this nut and one on the other side, remove these nuts. Now we're going to need our flathead screwdriver to pop some tabs on the back of the vent. Now to remove this little tray, we're just going to come to the back here, press down this tab with 2 fingers, and pull the tray out. I'll be using this heat gun to heat up this trim and remove the old vinyl. So as you can see, I have this back to the old wood trim. Now I have to go ahead and do that to all the remaining pieces of trim. Alright, before we get started wrapping the trim, it's a good idea to take some isopropyl alcohol, put it on a cloth like so, and just wipe the trim down to make sure it's nice and clean. Don't forget to get the back edges as well, because we'll be wrapping the vinyl around the back of the trim. So I'm just going to drape a towel over the vise here so we don't harm the trim, and we can use the vise to hold the trim in place to make it easier to work on. So we've got it clamped in there. Now we can easily drape the vinyl over the piece without it hitting the table. So I'm just going to take my vinyl and I'm going to drape it over the trim to see how much I need. You want to keep in mind to use about 1 inch of extra overlap so you can get it around the edges. Once you've marked how much you need, you can grab your knife and give yourself a bit of extra material, and you can cut your vinyl like so. Got our piece of vinyl here to wrap that door trim. Just going to make sure with our isopropyl alcohol here that the trim is nice and clean and ready for vinyl. Okay, so we're going to peel off the back layer of the vinyl here and lay it right on top of your piece of trim. As you do so, just lightly apply some pressure to prevent any air bubbles from forming. You can just leave it draping over the edges here. So whenever you're encountering creases like this, you're going to need to apply some heat, stretch the vinyl, and kind of apply some pressure like this just to work the creases out. So now that I've got a pretty nice outline of the piece of trim, I'm just going to take my knife here and come around and cut off the excess. You still want to leave about 1 inch extra just to overlap the edge. So now you should be left with something like this, and as you can see, it's starting to take shape, but we still need to use our heat gun and pull this edge around and over to the back edge here. So now we're going to apply a generous amount of heat using our heat gun, and we're going to pull this edge very tight around and stick it to the back of the trim. Now you can see we have a nice clean edge here, and our piece of trim is taking more and more shape. We're just going to continue wrapping the edge around to the back of the trim and pulling it nice and tight. When you come to a corner like this, you're going to need to take your knife and cut out a little notch, which will allow you to fold the vinyl more easily. So you're just going to cut a little notch out like that, which will make it easier to fold the individual pieces. So after applying a lot of heat and stretching the edges very tight, this piece of trim is complete. So this covers how to do long flat pieces of trim like door trim. Now we're going to be moving on to stuff that has holes in it, like this dash trim. Alright, so we're going to follow the same steps here. We're going to grab our isopropyl alcohol, clean this trim off, then we'll grab our vinyl here, we'll roll it out and give ourselves a bit extra. Then we're going to go ahead and cut it to size. So we've got our piece cut to size. We're going to go ahead and peel off the backing, and we can go ahead and lay this over the piece of trim. We'll go ahead and apply some heat with the heat gun just to improve the adhesion. So since we can see exactly where the hole is here, we can take our knife, and you're going to want to cut and leave 3/4 to an inch of excess vinyl. Just cut that out. Now we're going to want to take our knife and cut into each of the corners. You can take the heat gun here, heat up each side of the box, and just push the edge in. Now we're going to go ahead and pull it out of the vise here, and you can see we have an outline, but we still need to trim off this excess and pull the edges tight around the back. So now we're just going to do the same thing as before and use our heat gun and pull all the edges tight all the way around. So after working it with the heat gun, we've got some nice sharp edges, and this piece of trim is done. So now we can take our air vent, slide it into place like so, and push down to clip it into place. And that's what it looks like with the vent in place. You can use the skills and techniques shown here to wrap almost any car interior. Alright, so these two pieces are done, the door trim and the driver's side dash trim. I'm not going to show you the process of wrapping every single piece of trim because it would just get repetitive, but I am going to show you what the car looks like with all the new trim installed.